For as long as I can remember, I've always had trouble sleeping. I was a teenager by the time I realized it wasn't normal to lay awake for 2 or 3 hours before finally falling asleep. And even then, I only sleep for a couple hours. I tried everything to ease my condition. I've tried melatonin, sleeping pills, exercise, alcohol, marijuana, white noise, warm milk, sensory deprivation, therapy, Ambien, hypnosis, magnesium supplements, valerian root, changing my diet, tea, Ativan, yoga, hot baths, ice baths. The list goes on and on. Most things didn't work at all, and the few that did would result in me not getting any restful sleep. I've had doctors look me over and paid way too much for a battery of tests to identify a cause. Nothing was ever found. So I almost gave up and just accepted that I would be tired forever. However, a while ago, I finally found something that helped. I started keeping a notepad on my nightstand next to my bed. I would write down whatever I was thinking about, just letting my thoughts flow onto the page. The first time I tried it, I settled into bed with the pen and paper and just started writing whatever came to my mind. I'm in bed. I want to sleep. I wish I could find out what it's like to dream. That was the first thing I wrote. Then I was waking up the next morning, feeling refreshed for the first time I could remember in my life. I actually cried a little once I realized I had slept for 8 full hours. If that seems like an overreaction, you've never suffered from severe long-term insomnia. I looked back over the notebook after I calmed down a bit, just to see what all I had written. I remembered the first 3 sentences, but there was a little more after that. I hear a voice in the void. It is screaming. I can hear you. I didn't think too much of this, just chalking it up to ramblings of a man on the edge of somnolence. But it did creep me out a little. However, I didn't think about it beyond that as I went through my day. The next night, I settled in and started jotting on the notepad. Was it a fluke? Will this work again? I hope I dream this time. I woke up the next morning after that, feeling even better than I had the first time. I had a dream of an endless range of beautiful mountains that I was flying through. It was the most beautiful experience of my life. I looked over the pad to see if there would be any more strange writing there, and I was not disappointed. Enjoy the dream. I was more than a little rattled by this. It was so simple that I could easily dismiss it, but it stuck in my mind like a splinter. I thought about it all that day, unable to shake the cancerous thought. I kept telling myself that I had written it on the edge of sleep and probably felt the dream coming on. It was probably something I wrote. I mean, I did enjoy it immensely. I think it was the first dream I had ever had. Still, I felt a little unnerved by it all. I settled back into my bed for the third night and pulled out the notepad and pen. I took a few deep breaths and let my thoughts wander freely from my head to the page. I loved the dream last night. I've never felt this good in my entire life. The weird messages are a little creepy, but I shouldn't let it get to me. That night, I dreamed of laying in my backyard, staring up at the stars twinkling like ice shards in the black sky. My fire pit was crackling lazily next to me. I couldn't see it from my position, but I could actually feel the warmth of the flames safeguarding me against the chill of the evening. It wasn't as exciting as flying around the mountains in my previous dream, but I didn't mind that. It was peaceful. I woke up and looked at the notepad, wondering what strange note I had left myself this time. Don't let it unnerve you. Just watch the stars. You'll soon walk among them. The peace of the dream faded immediately as I read that final sentence. There was something sinister about it that I couldn't place my finger on. Walk among the stars? What the hell did that mean? I felt a strange sense of foreboding for the rest of the day. I work at a warehouse as a certified forklift operator, which means my mind has plenty of opportunities to wander as I load pallets onto trucks or stack them in designated holding areas. The whole day, as I listened to the drone of the forklift's motorized workings, I kept wondering what that final message meant, and kept coming up with nothing. I was still adjusting to all the extra energy the sleep was providing me with, though, so I wasn't ready to stop using the notepad method yet. I got home and actually felt energetic enough to cook myself a nice dinner of pan-seared pork chops with fried apples and onion slices. Then deglaze the pan with chicken stock and added ground mustard seed, as well as butter to make a sweet and savory sauce to top it with. It was exquisite, and by the time I finished eating, all my anticipation had drained away. I got in bed and reached for my pen and notepad to begin jotting down whatever came into my mind. I've decided I'm going to stop stressing over these notes I'm leaving for myself. It's worth it to have a good night's sleep. I wonder what weird messages I'll leave for myself tonight. That's as much as I remember writing. That night I had another dream. I was standing in front of a mirror, but the reflection was hazy, as if I was trying to look through a thick fog. The result was a dark silhouette standing in the mirror, leaning closer as I leaned closer, and shifting when I shifted. I was transfixed by the reflection, curious as to what it looked like, but unable to clearly make it out. I reached a hand to my face and rubbed my chin in thought, then jolted awake as the figure suddenly waved a hand of its own volition. My heart was pounding in my ears as I sat upright in my bed. I felt a pang of dread as I leaned over to look at my notepad. The message this time obliterated any chance for dismissing the note as meaningless.
They're not from yourself. I see you.
I didn't use the notepad that night. I just laid there, too scared to sleep. No matter how desperately I wanted to. Unfortunately, I had become acclimated to sleeping regularly, and the exhaustion I felt as I watched the night sky through my window turn from black to gray was worse than it had ever been. I almost called into work, but forced myself to go through the motions anyways. I started feeling dumb, realizing I was being paranoid. I had cost myself the perfection of a night's rest and purchased miserable lethargy in its stead. It was a fool's bargain, and I decided I would put my fears to the side this evening. I was still afraid of what these messages meant, but I was more afraid to go back to the hell that takes the place of the world when one is denied nocturnal respite. I got into my bed and picked up the pen and notepad, hesitating only a moment as my eyes lingered on that final message. I shook the thought from my head and pushed on.
This is ridiculous. I'm myself. I'm leaving these notes. There is no other explanation. I'm done with being afraid.
It was short and sweet, right to the point. I felt my eyes grow heavy as I was barely able to finish that last word. And the ocean of sleep pulled me beneath its heavenly waves. Yet those heavenly waves washed me ashore on the beaches of hell itself. I was in some sort of dark cavern, the only light coming from guttering torches planted in the stone floor. They were scattered all about the enormous space, but seemed concentrated around some sort of throne with a dark figure sitting on it. It was hard to focus on the figure, like his body was wreathed in twisting tendrils of smoke. I could see it was covered in chains, though. I felt myself drawn to the base of the great stone chair, like a current pulling me inexorably along. No matter how hard I kicked against it, I stood before the throne and could feel the creature staring at me, though I wasn't even sure if it had eyes. I felt my hand reach out and was surprised to see I was holding a weathered key. The figure gestured at a lock resting at the foot of the throne. I didn't want to unlock it, fearing what this hellish thing full of malevolence would wrought upon me when it was unbound. But once again, I was powerless to halt myself. I inserted the key and the lock popped open with a loud click. And then my eyes opened and I was lying in my bed. I was covered in sweat and shivering. I could see the notepad sitting there on the nightstand, glaring up at me with the same threatening aura I had felt emanating from the thing on the throne. With a shaking hand, I picked it up and read the newest message.
You are my bridge now. You are my dream. The throne awaits.
I had been convincing myself that all of this were just ramblings, that I was suffering from paranoia. But I decided in that moment that something horrible was happening. I threw the notepad across the room, feeling tears well up in my eyes. I felt sick, but didn't hesitate to get out of bed. I went downstairs to make coffee and fought the twin urges to put all of this out of my mind, while also trying to make sense of it. Both attempts were futile. I was also horrified to see I had slept for 12 hours. It is the longest I'd ever slept in my life. I decided then and there that I would not be using the notepad again. If I was doomed to never sleep a day again in my life, so be it. I'd rather die exhausted than let that thing have its way. I went through my day as normal, doing my laundry, cleaning my home, shopping for groceries. As the banality of the day dragged on, I felt the tension filling my body begin to ease a little. After all, life would continue as it had before the notepad. It may not be pleasant, but it would be familiar. Unfortunately, that night, I experienced a sensation I had never felt before. As the day degraded into night, I felt a strange heaviness around my eyes and realized that must be what it feels like to be sleepy. I fought the feeling all the way until midnight, then could fight it no longer. I laid down in my bed, spying the notepad from across the room, lying on the floor where I had thrown it. If I had the energy, I would have gotten up and thrown it in the garbage. But I couldn't have left my bed if my house had been on fire. The mounting dread did nothing to stay the hand of drowsiness that pulled my eyelids down, 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 into a darkness so complete that even my thoughts were dark blanks. After a while, I began to see pinpricks of light in the darkness. which confused me. I still felt like I was awake, but there they were, a multitude of stars shining from the inky well of the void I was in. I was in a starry abyss, and by my side, though it was hard to make out, was the smoke-wreathed figure walking with me. It spoke to me, spoke through me. It was my own voice, but the thing had hijacked it to communicate with me.
Kneel before me, and you shall walk among the stars.
Suddenly, the stars winked out, and I was shrouded in the darkness once more. For a moment, there was no light and no sound, but that only lasted for a couple seconds. Suddenly, I was on fire. My skin was burning, and I tried to scream, but the silence persisted as I was consumed. I could feel my muscles contracting as they cooked, twisting me into a fetal position as I quivered in agony. The thing spoke again with my voice.
Stand against me, and you shall burn.
I woke up on the floor next to my bed. I must have been thrashing around in my sleep because my blankets and sheets were twisted around me. To my absolute horror, the notepad was next to me, and in large words that were hastily scrawled across the entire page was a new message.
I am near.
I looked at the clock and saw I had slept for 14 hours. I called into my job and explained to my boss that I was sick, which wasn't exactly a lie. He wasn't happy, but accepted the explanation easily enough. I spent the entire day shopping for supplies for the evening. I was going to fight this. I would try everything to avoid kneeling before it. I bought coffee and energy drinks, enough to give a rhino a heart attack. Hell, I'd have bought coke if I knew where to get drugs. I got home, and even though the sun was only just setting, I could feel that same sensation of exhaustion creeping into my body. I sat on my couch and began drinking all the coffee I could. It didn't seem to help. And anger began to seep through me. I stormed upstairs and grabbed that damn notebook, went into my backyard and burned it. As the flames devoured the notepad, I thought of the dream where I had been on fire and shuddered. I couldn't shake the recognition of how similar the black flakes of burning paper were to my skin in the dream. Still, after the notepad was reduced to ash, I felt a little better. I went back inside and continued drinking energy drinks while watching TV. I glanced at the clock every so often, noting the slow passage of time. Each hour felt like another victory, and before long, I was watching the sun dissolve the night sky. I had made it. I felt a bittersweet happiness, longing to feel the rest I had felt when I first used the notepad. but decided a Pyrrhic victory was better than a total loss. I got dressed and headed to work, attempting to return to some routine. I felt less and less tired as I went through the motions, driving my forklift and moving product about the warehouse. As I worked, my boss yelled my name and waved me down. I got off the forklift and made my way to him.
Feeling better?
Yeah, I think so.
Good. We need all hands right now. Next time, if you're not going to be able to make it, make sure to call earlier. It gives me time to line up another driver on the schedule to cover your spot.
Yes, sir. Sorry about that.
That's all right. Just try to be better about it. The reason I waved you down, though, is someone is in the front office to see you. It seemed important.
I felt a little confused, but started heading that way. Truthfully, I didn't have any idea who it could be, considering I don't socialize with anyone. That's not an exaggeration. I don't have friends. I don't go out, and I don't have any living family. My existence is solitary, a result of my insomnia making it impossible to talk to people for any other reason than necessity. By the time I reached the office, my mind was racing. I walked in and saw the receptionist look up at me. She was talking on the phone and held up a single finger, silently mouthing the words, "One moment." I took a seat on one of the cheap chairs against the wall and politely waited for her to finish. She hung up the phone after a while and called out to me,
"Sorry to keep you waiting. There's a man to see you in the conference room."
The conference room was gone. In its place was the dark cavern with the throne. The unchained and smoke-shrouded figure stood up as I walked in and seemed to grow taller as it did so. I turned to run, but the door had vanished behind me. I collapsed to the ground, gasping for air as the fire began to consume me once more. The thing slowly walked towards me until it loomed over me, its dark form vanishing in a reef of flames and smoke from my smoldering skin. I heard it speak, this time in a voice that sounded like stone on stone, mixed with the crackle of fire.
"I have arrived."
I woke up in my bedroom, my whole body aching. As my eyes adjusted, I could see the walls of my bedroom had large words covering every inch of them.
"I have arrived."
The message was scrawled over and over again. My heart was beating in my ears, and I screamed aloud in frustration. I checked my phone and saw I had been asleep for almost 2 days. I know this will be my last few moments of consciousness. I don't know how I know that, but I do. I know that I have a choice to make. I've become convinced that the entity doing this to me is the devil, or some kind of demon. It is something of pure evil. If it comes through into our world, it will bring about the end of everything. I don't know why this has happened to me. I'm not sure that matters anymore. I have to choose if I'm going to kneel and damn everyone to this thing's machinations, or pick the other option. I wanted to send out this last message to the world I hardly ever spoke to. No one may read it, and even those that do will likely never care. But I needed to make sure there was some record of what I've done and why I've done it. This isn't just my way of seeking some measure of solace in glorifying myself or expressing self-pity for my plight. This is my warning to you all. There is a thing wreathed in smoke and darkness, a thing that is trying to break into our world. I know it will not stop until it does. All it needs is someone to kneel to it. I took a long time thinking this through, unsure if there was any other thing I could do in my situation. Finally, I've come to the conclusion that there is no other way. This is not a decision that I made easily, but one I agonized over for as long as I could. I want to keep fighting, but I know that I've lost. Yet, even in my defeat, I can deny this enemy its most prized asset. I'm looking at the rope hanging before me. I'm full of fear and misery, wishing there was any other thing I could do. But I feel my eyes growing heavy once again, and know that I must act now. I won't have another chance once I slip away again. If you ever wake up to find messages you don't remember writing and are visited by a smoke-shrouded figure in your dreams, you must make this same choice. My life has been a difficult one, full of loneliness and exhaustion. I fear the end of it nonetheless. Despite this, I still rather choose this than choose to kneel to that monster. At least now, I can finally sleep.